So good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the session of DeTalks, which is a design conversation initiative by the Ajeenkya Patil School of Design. Here we have experts from design field, and we discuss everything about design and new avenues in design for students. And today we have with us Professor Anne Boddington. She's a very interesting person, I must say. She's a qualified architect, and she has more than 20 plus years of experience of working in education. I think her core interest lies in design research. And she's held academic positions with University of Brighton and Middlesex University. But what interests me today to have a conversation with her today is that she is the chairperson of UKRI, and she is chairing the Circular Economic Advisory Board. So welcome to DeTalks, ma'am, and we are really excited to have a conversation with you on such amazing, diverse topics.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
So as we were talking about you being the chair of the UKRI, we would love to know more about what work you are doing as the chairperson for, the Circular Economy Advisory Board, and with all the climate change happening and the obvious effects that we are seeing of it all over the world in different ways. So what do you think can design education, and how do you think can designers play a crucial role constructively towards the circular economy?
Well, just to be clear, I'm not chair of UKRI.
I'm so sorry.
A part of UKRI. UKRI is a huge government body.
Yes,
I chair a relatively small part of it, which is the advisory board for UK research and innovation. They have what they call a pilot project, which is £30 million sterling, looking at the circular economy, and they've actually chosen to do that through material flows. So they're looking at it through materials, not through design, in that sense. And I have to emphasize that I chair the advisory board for the researchers, and it's a hub and spoke model. So there are a number of spokes, which are different channels of looking at the circular economy. So one in built environment, for example, which is a major issue in circular economics. One in textiles, which is the sort of design one, or it's probably closest to design in terms of understanding. And then there are a number of others in chemicals and metals, different kinds of metals. And it's looking at the circularity of those supply chains, really. And I think the important thing from a design perspective, in terms of looking at the circular economy, is how you basically design processes in order to make the economy more circular. And circularity in the economy, and the reason I think it's important is lots of people focus on the circular and not on the economy.
Yes.
The important thing in this is that you can in the circular economy is that you can use a material and put it back in the economy, or look at all the waste products that come out of the material production, and that you can increase their value. So it's not really about just reuse. It's actually and that's why it's about economics. That's why it's called the circular economy. And I think for designers, it's very much an issue of looking at how you can be creative, inventive, and intelligent about the way you design a system. So if you've got something like I'll give you a really extreme example, if you like. If you've got seaweed, we're an island, as you know, quite a small one. we have seaweed growing off the coast. So, and we usually harvest seaweed for mainly for fertilizer, for example. But seaweed is used, as you will know, for food, for human food. So in certain parts of the world, including here now, we eat seaweed. But we also use it for very high-end products, facial products. So it's really about how to make sure that not only do we use it for fertilizer, which is the way we traditionally use it, but also that we can then upcycle, if you like, some of the waste products that you make high-end facial products, high-end body lotions and oils and things like that, which actually are increasing the use and value and harvesting of something like seaweed. So it's about looking at there being, if you like, no bin in any, there's no waste in any product.
Right.
And circularity is very much, if you want to put it into very simple terms, it's that you no longer have a waste bin in whatever your process is. And so it's, if you want to put it in design terms, it's designing out the bin.
Right. That's really fantastic. I mean,
that's a very simple way of putting it, but it's really, if you think that you don't throw anything away, so you've got to find it and put a value to that to the material, then you have no bin.
That's such a fantastic thought, to have no bin in your production, because I was just walking past our garment studio where we teach students pattern making and draping, and that's where they learn all those things. And I was just looking at the heap of the the little bits of the scrap of the fabric that was left out, and there's always I kind of think that something needs to happen with this, because as students of fashion design, we do sensitize the students regarding how important it is to respect your materials, because we do take them through the process of understanding that where do your materials come from. So we take them from the farm to factory, entire process, and the amount of time, energy, and the resources that are put into making like one piece of textile. So we do need to respect it. And I think this whole concept of having a no bin is really exciting me, because if I think of removing the bin from our garment studio, it's going to be hell of a project, I think. To just start working something with that would be so interesting.
You could give it to students as a product. You say, well, nothing can leave this studio.
Yes, I think I'm making a note of that. I'm going to put it in my next assignment. Like, you know what, we're going to empty the bin, and that would be another fantastic project.
But the nice thing about that is you can do it at any scale.
Yes, I was just thinking about our automotive workshop, and I was thinking there are so many other product design students and automobile students also keep on using all sorts of materials, and you very rightly put that the circularity is all about the material flow. So I think it's a very fantastic concept, and I think there's a lot for students to take in from here, that I think they're just learning to make, but they're not thinking about the end process. So I think if they start thinking from behind to the beginning, I think they'll start understanding what do we mean by circularity. That's such amazing concept. I mean,
but I think if you think about it in your home, if you think about it in a factory, if you think about it in any context, it's a very good way of explaining circularity. Then what you have to do is kind of say, well, what's the economy that then develops that? So what do you make from it that increases the economic production, but doesn't increase necessarily the material production or material use?
That's fantastic. I'm excited to see the bin being empty in the studio now. We'll keep you in loop as to how we end up doing that for sure.
I think the one thing I'd say though is it's probably we'll probably touch on it, is that it does mean we have to think differently about the aesthetics, because we have a kind of fascination. We have a bird here called a magpie. And the magpies like shiny things. They like new things. They're attracted to shiny things. Designers are similar. They are often attracted to shiny new things. And we have to think about how we make beautiful things from what we currently consider as waste or rubbish. And that I think is we're not talking in sustainability or in circular economy about what we would describe in England as the hair shirt. We're not looking to create something that is uncomfortable or not beautiful aesthetically. It is actually the challenge of tackling all of those things, not just and we don't necessarily need new materials to do it. We just need to find aesthetics that work for us.
Yes, I think this is such a fantastic point that you've pointed out, because every time any student is, they're, especially for design, it is considered as a very creative field where the students feel that whatever they have to make has to be very aesthetically pleasing or very beautiful for its appearance, and that's how they're going to get more marks, or that's how they're going to ask lure anybody to buy the product or the garment or anything that they're making. And I think students do lose out a lot in making just, the aesthetic part of it. As you are working so much in terms of research and, to be more precise, design research, could you just throw a light on the importance of research and design? Because I think that plays a key role towards innovation. And I would like if you would elaborate on that aspect a little more regarding the design research, innovation, and how we can probably latch it on to the circular concept that we were just having a word about.
Well, let's start with joining up design to sit. The first bit is it's about what I would describe as mutual benefit, that everybody in a circular environment of any kind, everybody wins. So that's one of the other things to think about, is that it's about there is no harm to anybody, but there is also a win-win-win for everybody in that system. So that's the first thing, and designing that is a challenge. I want to just come on though to what I think is a question that we don't ask or answer enough, which is what people think design is and does. I have a very clear sense from my perspective as to what I think design is and does, and that is that design is not a very big, lots of people say design is everything, and I think that's not true. My own view is that design is the element that gives form or narrative or shape to an idea. So we have a concept, we have an idea, and people will talk about a concept or an idea. Innovation is the production development of that idea. So what the design does, which is this small bit in the middle, but it's a very important bit, is that it's the bit that gives a form to that idea. And it's not really about aesthetics, in my view. It's really about, because it may be something about a service, or it may be something that is not material, for example. I mean, fashion is often material, although increasingly there are lots of questions around the relationship between, for example, AI and fashion, and where those two things come together, and whether you need to ever make a prototype, for example, in a fabric, or whether you make it virtually. So there are all sorts of questions about that, about fashion shows, about all the things that we love, but that are very demanding in terms of materials, in terms of resource. Fashion shows are a very, very costly thing to put on, for example. So I think you have to be really, really clear about what design is and does. And the thing I liken design to is, if you've got a mobile phone, your design is like your SIM card. It's the little bit that makes all the other things work. Innovation is the development of that. So it's how you implement it into a system. And then you have concept at the other side. So design is the thing that gives a form to both of those as to how you then innovate, and what you innovate. So for me, it's not really about aesthetics at all. The aesthetics are about commerciality. They're about all the other things and how we develop those with integrity and values and all the other things about circularity, for example, or what one of my colleagues at the Design Council calls regenerative design. So it's about how you regenerate the earth and that we live in harmony with the natural world rather than that we master it. So it's really trying to think about design in that sense, that it's the little bit that gives the form to the idea, and then you go on to innovate. And so that might be in one situation, it might be something that where you since we're talking in India, we might talk about tea. So in England, one of the things we use is a teapot. And one of the really difficult things in a teapot is often that it doesn't pour very well. And amazingly, how we've got I've got hundreds of teapots. Most of them, if you pour, they drip.
Right.
So what I would say is that there is what I would describe as incremental innovation from design, which is can you just design a better spout for the teapot?
Right.
That's an incremental development of a thing that we don't have. And then there are things which, if you're as old as me, are things like the smartphone. So in my early life, there was no such thing. There was no such thing as a mobile phone. Was the size of a very large breeze block. It was a very large building block when I was a student and when I was first on the site. Now we have a computer which is about this size. So this is a big one, which has more computing power than most computers when I was a student, which were the size of a large room. So we've, that's a piece of what I would describe as disruptive innovation. And one of the things I had to explain to my mother for years was that you didn't need a mobile phone to call a mobile phone. So you could be at home and you could call a mobile phone and the person would answer it. She thought you had to have a mobile phone to call a mobile phone. So that was a piece of disruptive innovation that changed many of our lives forever. You could work anywhere, you could receive calls where you were never not at home, which is, of course, the when you were phoning house to house, very different thing. So in terms of design, very little of that was about aesthetics. The iPhone has lots of aesthetic details in it, but the function of it is nothing to do with aesthetics. The function of it is all about connectivity to the individual. So it's a very much a systems design idea. In that sense, Airbnb, if you know something like that, is the same.
Airbnb is something like that. Yeah,
it's a system, but it's about a system. Amazon is about a system. They're all systems based. Airbnb has beautiful aesthetic photographs of apartments and all sorts of things to stay in. But the design part, the bit that gives the form to the idea, has got nothing to do with aesthetics. It's got everything to do with clarity of idea and function. So it's just thinking about design in those terms and going back to circularity, then saying, and there must be no detriment, mutual benefit for everybody, and no waste. And that's a set. That's a very tight set.
Yes,
things.
that is.
So when you come to research, there isn't really anything about research. Is just research, and that might sound like stating the obvious. For me, research, process investigation, it has to have a process, have methods. So you have to be methodological. It is not it's not bolts from heaven or inspiration. It's not about just inspiration. It's so a lot of design research actually is about the innovation space.
Yes.
So it's how you implement or how you test something. You have an idea, and you think through that idea. So it's a process of investigation. It must lead, if it's research, it must lead to new insights. So it must lead to something that hasn't been done before. Now, that's a big ask. That's a very big question. So new insights mean you have to know what's gone before. So you have to be scholarly. So you have to know all the things that have been done previously. Otherwise, so research is a process of investigation. It needs methods leading to new insights, and it needs to be in the public domain. So it needs to be shared, and it may need to be protected to be shared, i.e. it needs IP protection.
Yeah.
But those three things make up a good definition of research, which is one we use here. But I think it's very relevant to any field. But it means that you have to be very clear about being scholarly. So you can't just say it's a new idea. Might be a new idea to you, but that's about scholarship. So scholarship is about the development of knowledge in an individual, in me. So I can be a good scholar before I have to be a good scholar before I can be a researcher.
You need to know what is out there, and then you can actually start analyzing till the time you've not broadened your horizon to know what is actually out there.
Otherwise, the claim that something is new or is a new idea or a new take on an idea is only in your head, and you can't find, and it's not enough to just Google it.
Absolutely.
Because Google, well, of course, Google will give you what you want. So Google, unless you keep clearing their cache, will just feed back to you the things you search for all the time. So it's not research in that sense. You have to look at quite hard at kind of what's happened before and where the research is. And you can often have, for example, and I'll use my own discipline for this, you can often have a very horrible building that's got fantastic research in it, or you can have a brilliant building that has no research in it. Okay. And the reason for that is that in many expensive and signature buildings architecturally or signature products, all the research has been done already and has been finished. And the reason that you wouldn't put research into a very expensive signature building is that somebody might sue you if it goes wrong. So it's very simple in that sense, is that you wouldn't be doing experiments in a building that you wanted to. So if the Indian government was building a new university or something, they wouldn't want the buildings to be experimental because they don't want them to leak, fall down, or anything else to happen. So all the research must have been done previously and tested so that you don't get into those kind of problems with expensive work. On the other hand, if you're building a small experimental building, it may not be great architecture or great design, but but that you might be testing something interesting that's new and novel, and you can see whether it works. It's not a great risk. So all research has an element of risk in it, and so in some situations you would not want to take on the research.
Take on a bigger risk, probably.
But design isn't very good at, often not saying it's not very good at research. Designers and research often don't like each other very much, because designers often want to just do ideas. They just want to create, and unfortunately they then don't do the scholarship, and you have to do tough scholarship to really undertake research well. So that's really important in that sense. And the question behind that is whether, given all the things we've talked about, whether we're really learning the right skills.
Yes, I mean,
That's a
I
big
mean,
challenge.
yes, when you rightly pointed out about, research is not Google, Googling a concept or an idea is not research. So, there's so many times when we are in class, we kind of keep on telling students that, you know what, go to the library, open a couple of books and actually, go through that book and, spend some time with that book, because it's become so fast with technology that it's just so easy for them to just, Google 4, 5 concepts together and not actually spend, quality time with that one concept. So it does bring me back to the thought that what skills are actually relevant to for a design student, or for what kind of skills should go into a design curriculum. And I think no better than you as a person to throw light on it. Like, I mean, yeah, what would be your take on the skills?
I think one of them is, and it used to happen in design schools, where you learn a craft. So you learn how to do something very
Right,
well. And the reason
right.
by hand. So I'm not talking about you learn how to use a laser cutter. I'm talking about that you learn how, for example, in fashion, to cut a garment.
Right, right.
Or to stitch by hand, or
Right.
by a hand machine. The reason I think it's important that you learn a form of craft is it takes time. It takes time, and it takes hours and hours and hours. And it doesn't really matter what the craft is, in a way. It's the fact that you can't do it over, it can't be quick. If I mean, the example that's often used is, if you're playing a piece of music is written for a time. So if it's in the Western world, if it's a quartet, you can't just play it faster. It's designed to be played, one of Mozart's quartets has to be played at a certain speed at a certain time, and it takes that time, and you have to sit and listen, and you have to sit and play. You can't sort of speed it up by Googling it or doing the equivalent. And I think it's that sense of giving something time, and in a culture which is where instant gratification is the requirement often.
My God, yeah.
Or we want fast fashion, all of those sorts of things, then we have a challenge. And for designers, you need to understand the difference between, if you like, slow and fast, and what those things teach you. And one of the, I always ask, I think there is a real question for education, which is, why do we tell students what we know rather than what we don't know? That's a big question in education for me. There are lots of things we don't necessarily know, which we're just beginning to study, which is things like what happens in the brain when you design, for example, or when you go through a creative process. What's actually happening? How many synapses are kind of developing, and what's changing in the brain when we do something like that? And I think those things are really fascinating, and I think it's really important that we start to understand what it takes to do that. And it's not instant, and you have to do it and do it and do it again. And it's when you do it again and again and again that you understand something different about that process. If anybody playing a musical instrument will know that very well. Takes a lot of time to play a musical instrument well, as opposed to sample other people playing musical instruments. And so a lot of design is a recombination of things, including the iPhone, actually, as an example. The iPhone is lots and lots. What Apple did was to go and buy up lots of bits of technology that they then put together to make the iPhone. So there is a piece of design which is all those combinations.
Right.
Suitcases on wheels were another one. There were suitcases on wheels.
Right.
Suddenly somebody put them together, but it took a long time. For those two concepts came together, and they came together when we stopped having servants to carry our bags, and we had to carry them for ourselves, particularly women. You then bring wheels and suitcases together, and you kind of combine them so that they work for you. Those are combinatory things.
Right.
but we don't reinvent the wheel. We just, the wheel was round and always will be, it's and we had suitcases or things like them before. We've made them lighter, we've put wheels on them, and we've given them handles so that we don't damage our back. But all of those things came from somewhere else, and it was about the combination of them that brought a design into the world, in that sense, and changed lots and lots of things in the process. The iPhone is exactly the same. In that sense, it's a recombination of lots of inventions. So, so it's a really interesting.
I mean, yeah,
it's a really interesting way of thinking about it. That's very different from how lots of people think about design.
I'm absolutely going to go and have a look at my suitcase at home today, and just marvel at it. I'm like, wow. I honestly, I never thought about it. Like the way you put it, I never thought about it. I just used to appreciate that it's so nice that I don't have to carry it. My hands are free while I'm traveling. I honestly never gave this a thought, and this is such a fresh perspective. And I think that's probably what we need to also inculcate a little bit into our sort of a design education. Also focus on the skills, but also try to push students to have a fresh perspective on the ordinary things, probably, and that might lead us to something different or new or change.
Yeah, but I think some of them can be quite modest things. I mean, I think in India, I mean, I was reading one of your doctoral students' pieces, which was about food delivery. So food delivery in India is probably newer than it is here, but it requires all sorts of different kinds of systems, from farmers, from the farm to the plate.
Right.
And one of the things you do much less of in India than we do here is we process a lot of food so that we have what we would call a ready meal. Right. So you can buy a ready meal in a supermarket. Right. And in India you still cook from scratch predominantly, and you have amazing produce, but that produce still gets delivered to the home now. Yes. In a way that you used to go to a market or you used to go to a grocery store and buy. Right. And COVID, of course, changed that lots. Yes. And so there are whole parts of that system that you can design in, and it might be about improving the network of farmers and how they're all connected. It might be about the delivery process. It might be about electric vehicles that you deliver with. It might, there are so many areas where we could improve, or we could use the things we already do better. And the suitcase and the wheels is one example of that. Another would be something like all the energy that we expend, whether it's dancing or running, could power our houses, particularly in India. So we have dance halls in England where the people dancing on the dance floor generates electricity, which powers the lights and powers the venue. So how do we do things like that? How do you harness the sun in India, for example? How do you harvest the water? Water security in India is probably one of the greatest research challenges of the country. Yes. So how do you think about the need, rather than inventing, bright, shiny things that we don't need anymore? There are many challenges that we do need. And how do we
do
that better?
Yes, I think that's fantastic.
And that brings research. That means you've got to do research. You've got to have a process. You've got to look at what new insights you want to create, and you need to share them in order that many industries can generate things from them. So that's the research bit. And then the circular economy bit is no bin.
No bin. Oh my God, yes. I'm going to put forth this challenge to the students. So there's going to be no bin in the studio henceforth. So, let's just figure out what we're going to do with the waste.
You'll charge them if they throw it away.
Oh, I love this idea.
Penalty.
Why not? Penalty. Oh, yeah, good. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, I'm getting all sorts of ideas. I think
they get more marks the more that
yes,
the more
I
that
think
they
that
don't throw
marks
it
as a currency
away.
they understand. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to open a discussion on our faculty table, and I'm just going to have a chat with everyone and say that. So how do you think can we do this? I'm damn sure everybody's going to come up with very interesting answers. So yeah, that's really
So if you throw nothing away, you get an A.
yeah.
If you throw everything away, if you bring everything new, you fail.
Oh my God, yeah, that's fantastic.
That's quite brutal.
We could find it. Yeah, I think we could find a middle way to at least start pushing the idea of circularity or designing out the waste, and I think that would be really fantastic. I think this is one really important thing that the students will take from this conversation is no bin and circularity. I think these are the two highlights for me from this entire conversation.
But the other issue is value, is increasing the value too.
Increasing the value, yes.
That's the economic bit, and that's the bit I don't think we teach at all, really.
Absolutely.
In
education. Yeah, I know. But I think no bins is going to be the thing now. I'm excited about this. Just last one thing. What would you want to tell any aspiring design student? What's that one piece of advice which you would like to just give them?
I think now, and I think it is. There's two things I'd probably say actually. Is one is be aware of what is happening in the world. I mean, I spent a lot of my early design years looking at other designers and looking at design. But actually, I think one of the things about design is that it is a response to need. And I think, so for me, one of the things that's interesting is it's as important to understand something like the challenges of water security, for example, and all the things that might be vital around that, or to take on the no bin challenge in a kind in different ways, rather than kind of just invent the next trend in saris or the next trend in jeans. I mean, they're interesting, but I think you've got to take the challenge of them and the things that are. You often have to take the things that are wrong and make them right.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of thinking about that with the no detriment circularity economy element. That's what I probably, and I think design takes time. So does research. So you have to learn patience, and you have to do things more than once.
Yes. I think another key element that I would take out of this entire conversation is that in design, let's try and give purpose a higher value than the aesthetic, and I think we'll automatically be moving towards an interesting direction. Maybe that might be towards change, innovation, or better design. I think that we will understand as we go through the process, but I think giving importance to the purpose over the aesthetics is something that will I think do the job for us.
If you aesthetics, if we talked about beauty rather than aesthetics for a minute, beauty is very, very different in different cultures.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I think to understand in that is that what one person thinks is beautiful is not what another person thinks is beautiful, and I think that sense of being able to see beyond a sort of aesthetic trend is really vital.
Important. Right.
I think that's nothing to do with design, really.
Now that you put it that way. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for this amazing conversation, and I'm really glad that you could take time out of your busy schedule, and yes, I will keep you updated regarding the no bin challenge, and the students definitely are going to learn so much from this conversation, And yes, more power to you and to the amazing initiatives that you're working on.
Well, I look forward to coming back. I'm coming back the end of the year sometime to ADYPU. So maybe we can continue the conversation.